Rainy season here in Thailand, not the most pleasant, especially when the tide is out, although it has got a little bit of a charm to it. There's kind of a reflection in the shallows, but in my opinion, obviously, a beautiful blue sea with a beautiful blue sky is much more appealing. And because of the weather, we've not been out exploring as much. You want to go to the beaches, the mountains, etc. But you know, it's difficult when you can't really predict the weather. That's fine, it'll pass. We'll be back out on the road shortly. We've been sort of taking it easy. Been in a bit of a reflective mode, particularly with regards to what I was thinking about for this YouTube channel. I want to keep doing about 2 videos a week. It's not a schedule. It's not a job to me. It's just a hobby, but I really enjoy making the videos, putting stuff out there, hearing some comments, receiving comments, I should say, good or bad. Thought I'd make a video today reflecting on my time abroad. 15 years abroad. The reason I decided to make this video today is because I've watched a couple of videos. I've been suggested a couple of videos like this from various people in the last month or so. There's one guy called Mike in Korea, really good YouTube channel that I recommend. It basically just walks around Seoul. I basically just walk around Thailand. Offers his insight, his wisdom, his feelings after spending over 30 years in South Korea. And the reason it's interesting to me personally is because that could have been me. I spent 4 years in Korea and I was perfectly happy that I had the opportunity to move over to Tokyo. I mean, how lucky am I that I got to live in Seoul, Korea? And from there, I got to move over to Tokyo. So I thought I'd make a little bit more of a personal video today, just talking about each stage of my journey. I know when you put the word personal on something, you're immediately at risk of losing some viewers. That viewer retention rate might go down. People don't want to hear personal shit sometimes, and that's absolutely fine, but I enjoy those personal videos. So I left the UK at 24, and at first I thought it would be a year, 2 year max. I went out to Korea. The reason I went out to Korea is because I was looking at options of teaching abroad. The package that was offered in Korea, the way they handle the process for you looks like the most appealing. I think the biggest difference, I'll tell you right now, between moving to Korea and moving to Japan was having to find housing. In Korea, you go there, it's already taken care of by the company. You don't need to lift a finger. Yes, you don't get control over it, but the house that they will provide, the housing that they will provide, it meets a certain criteria. They give you everything you need. They give you a settlement allowance, which was nice. A little bit of free money to go buy yourself some cups and forks and spoons, etc. In Japan, you get none of that. So I'll get onto that in a minute. But the problem with Korea is you don't get to choose where you live. If you go with a private company, you can. But the program that I went with, the public program, you get a lot of perks, a lot of benefits. They make things easy for you, but you don't actually get to choose where you go. But the nice thing about Korea is it's a super small country. You can basically go from Seoul, which is north, to Busan, which is at the southern tip, in 2.5 hours on the KTX. I think that's great. You can basically travel anywhere within 3 to 4 hours. So I ended up out in the countryside first. And because I'd never done this sort of thing before, I kind of accepted it. First day I arrived, I looked out of the window. I thought, what the fuck am I doing with my life? But I still wake up right now and look out the window and think, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I immediately got in with a group of friends. I found a couple of really nice people. One guy in the town next to me, one guy who was living in the same town as me. We made the most of it. We had some great times. The first year flew by. I was traveling into Seoul. It was like a 3-4 hour bus sometimes with the traffic. And you kind of just accept that that's part of your weekly schedule. I was going probably once every 2 weeks, and then one weekend taking it easy, and then maybe once every 2 months venturing off to somewhere new. But Seoul was where I wanted to be. After a year, I said to them, look, I want to move to Seoul. I don't want to stay here for another year, but, you know, respectfully, I don't want to go home. And they'd obviously got some decent feedback that I'm a very likable character, believe it or not. I know I might not be too likable on here to some of you, but yeah, they basically said, right, all you have to do is put in an application process, as in you're starting from the beginning, but we'll fast track it. And there it was. With about 2 weeks, it was confirmed that I was moving off to Seoul. And that was one of the best periods of my life living in Seoul. One of my best friends from Manchester came out there. He was living in a different city at first, and then he was able to move to Seoul. And it was literally the freest time of my life. I had zero worries, no responsibilities. Money was just ticking over. It wasn't the best money, but it was just ticking over for that period. Partying all the time, traveling all the time, exploring Asia, Thailand, Philippines, etc. It was brilliant, but it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't long term. So after a couple of years of that, I started just observing from afar what was available, signed up for a couple of recruitment websites, and I started to get offered a couple of jobs in places like China. But the two places that I was interested in were Hong Kong and Tokyo. Luckily, one day I got that job that I applied for, had to go to Tokyo to do a job interview. And I was like, yes, this is what I want. I remember specifically doing that interview, exploring Tokyo for the day. And then I had a nighttime flight at Tokyo Skytree at nighttime. They have this like light that whips around it. And I remember being on a bus back to the airport, Narita, and looking at that and thinking like, man, I really want to be here. It's not that I was unhappy where I was. It was just like, wow, this is what life is. And I'm going to get to that point towards the end of the video, because I think it's really important that like at that time, I kind of had this idea of what I wanted my life to be, not for other people, but for myself. Now I had an idea of how I wanted to look back on my life when I'm older, and I was making things happen. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do career-wise, but I was putting the pieces of the jigsaw in place. So I moved to Tokyo. I left behind a good friendship group in Seoul. I still miss Korea nowadays, but that was the party period of my life. And I think that's what it will forever be in my mind. I stayed in Korea. Obviously, I would have grown up. I would have adapted. My lifestyle would have changed, just like if I'd stayed in Manchester. But that will now forever remain the party period of my life. And I moved out to Tokyo. And for the first year or so, I knew nobody. I had friends coming in and out, visits, focusing on weekends 4 weeks in advance, 6 weeks in advance. And once those were in the calendar, I was quite content to just explore on my own and wait for those big weekends. Easily be back in Japan right now. I love life in Japan. In fact, there's times when me and my wife talk about, should we go back to Japan? But with the baby, things are a little bit different. So the first year or so was just basically having fun, but it was very much more controlled fun. It wasn't that out of control, wild fun that I was having in those first couple of years in Korea. It was more like isolated incidents of madness. In fact, one of my biggest regrets was not making a YouTube channel back then, talking about the lifestyle that I was living in Tokyo. I made a fitness YouTube channel, not this channel that started off as fitness, but became whatever this is now, this 2.5 thousand followers community. But the point is that you're not this channel, but a different YouTube channel. But I got distracted. I was enjoying life a little bit too much and I wasn't disciplined enough. And maybe I'll never make it on the YouTubes. I used to go walking around Tokyo at nighttime. And nowadays I love watching videos of people walking around Tokyo at nighttime, just, POV walking, just exploring, because Tokyo is one of the most peaceful, relaxing places. It's safe. You can go walking at nighttime. You don't need to worry about things. You can just go and explore. And I never had that foresight. I think whoever came up with the first POV walk around a place YouTube channel, literally just put a camera in POV mode and walk, is a genius, because it's such a simple concept. But nowadays people are so interested in other places, seeing other places in a sort of more natural, organic light, that I think if I did that back then, maybe I'd be a billionaire by now. After a year in Tokyo, I met my life. And to me, that's a real turning point, because what that did was started to change my perspective on things. Now, up until that point, I was very happy and content going through life the way I was, a bit of a lone wolf, When I met her, I started to think about like a future more. And because she was from Thailand and she wasn't from Japan, although she'd grown up in Japan because she wasn't Japanese, I started to think like, okay, what would life be like for us long term? I think it's one of those things people don't really talk about. When you meet a foreigner in a different country, it's like if you meet a girl in her home country, or if she meets you in her home country, of course, that doesn't lock you down to that country, but it gives you a very clear path. Two foreigners meeting in a mutual destination. It's cool for the time being. We stayed there for another 2-3 years together. But eventually, if you do start to think long term, you have to think about other aspects of what life would be like in the future. So we continued to explore, save money, enjoy life. We had people visiting us, my friends, some of her friends. She had family close by. It was a really nice, comfortable way of living. But I started to get this idea of like, could we do this forever? And honestly, the answer, having said I'd still consider going back to Japan, the answer is still question mark. One of the words that I learned, one of the buzzwords about living out in Asia is homogenous, which basically means Japan is Japanese, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whereas the UK is a much more culturally mixed society. You know, you see Chinese communities, Indian communities, you see people of all different races, all different walks of life. In Japan, foreigners, outsiders are the minority, and Japanese are the majority. So living there, as much as I never experienced any sort of racism or any sort of prejudice, I never felt that, you always do feel like a little bit of an outsider. Now, I guess it really depends on why you are living there. If you can live off the grid completely in Japan, which is very rare, but if you have an opportunity to, you know, live by your own means, do what you want, do what you love, it's the best country in the world. Fortunately, that wasn't our situation. 2-3 years together, we went to the UK to visit my family, and we looked into moving to the UK, but it just wasn't on the cards for us at that time. It's just so much of a hassle, and I don't want to spend years apart, or even months, 6 months, a year, 2 years apart from each other in order to make that happen. I feel like you get one life, and if you are together with a partner in a moment and you want to continue that, then separating for the sake of a long-term plan. For some people, it might be worth it. But for me, because I've lived abroad for so long, because I know no other life except for living abroad, it wasn't on the cards to sort of like me go back to the UK, integrate into the UK society again, and then start the process of bringing her in when there's no guarantees we'd be happy there. I thought Thailand would be a better option. You're actually going to the visa office tomorrow, hence this kind of reflective video. It's just another year in Thailand that we're approaching. It can be frustrating. It's a lot of documents, a lot of paperwork, but it's a lot easier than the UK, and we get to live in Thailand. So we moved here in 2020. Obviously 2020, the world kind of shut down, or particularly in Thailand, 2021, the world kind of shut down. Whilst the world shut down, that's when our baby appeared on the scene. And she was born in October 2021. I remember we were going to one particular hospital for our appointments, for our checkups. And when it came to about a month before the birth, we were talking about the process. And they basically said, due to the insurance that she was using through her job, I wouldn't be allowed to be present during the birth, or because of COVID, for like 5 days, a week after. I'm like, there's no way that I'm not seeing my baby for the first week of her life. So we had to whip out some cash, find another hospital, and make sure that that wasn't a problem. Bloody hell, it's getting hot. It is humid as hell. So the baby comes in 2021, and that was when, I'll be honest, this is the most honest I'll be on this channel. And baby being born in Thailand, there was a lot of things that are different to the UK. If you're ever thinking about having a baby here, you should be prepared for that, because I'll be honest, this was the first time, only time we've had a kid, and there were certain things that, certain mistakes we made, a lack of foresight, let's call it, and we ran into a couple of hard times. You know, I had some issues with jobs because of the COVID situation and stuff like that. And, you know, everything sort of fell on us at once. And that was a dark time. And then we've had the opportunity to go back to Japan, be closer to her family, as I've spoken about. We went back there for a year, and that didn't really help. That wasn't a horrible time in our lives. It was a good time, but we weren't happy. It wasn't long-term. It wasn't sustainable. We realized that we were happier here in Thailand, but you have to make shit happen. Yes, the cost of living is lower, but you can't just expect everything to be easy. If you just want to be a normal family, you just got to make sure you got your pieces in place before you come out here. I've had to work bloody hard in the last few years especially, to sort of grow certain things and to sort of like keep other things ticking over in order to make sure we got our pieces in place. The biggest difference between certain people that come out here is the stage of life. You know, if you're coming out here as a retiree, for example, you know exactly how much money is rolling into your account every month. Good for you, Dad. And I just want to be with my girls and take care of my girls. And my wife works hard and I work hard, but I have a certain level of life that I want to hit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we could not live in this condo. We could get something cheaper, but I don't want to. I want to, if I'm going to live here, I want to live at a certain level of life. And this isn't super expensive, don't get me wrong, but there's always a way to spend less money. But at the end of the day, when does that become like not worth it anymore? That's my perspective anyway. So it's been tough, but we're happy right now. You know, I'm trying to put positive stuff online. Sometimes I lean into the negativity because that does definitely seem to get more views. But I hope that the videos that the vast majority of you see, and maybe the videos that anyone who's watched this particular video up until this point and is hearing these words, maybe you enjoy the perspective I share. And I'm hoping that that's the positive perspective on life, not the negativity that I sometimes throw out there to try and wind people up. That's that original point I made about an idea of what life should be. I always had this idea when I was younger that, like, when I'm an old man, I want to look back on my life and think it's interesting. That was it. I want to look back as a grandfather, as an old boy, and think, fucking hell, you've lived an interesting life. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to be rich, you have to be famous. You're not just followed in your parents' footsteps and lived in the same hometown your entire life. I really think travel is the essence of life. I'm not saying everyone has to move abroad for 15 years. Mine has been very circumstantial. One thing has rolled into another. It certainly wasn't the plan when I first left, but I think, you know, I think people who get out of their hometown, remove themselves from their comfort zone, remove themselves from their comfortable environment. I really respect anybody who does that. I think it's essential for personal growth. You're 21, whether you're 30, whether you're 50, 60, whether you've just retired and you're moving for the first time, good for you. Enjoy it, make the most of it. Don't come out here and immediately start comparing it to the life you've left behind, because it's going to be very different. Maybe for some people better, maybe for some people they won't be as happy. Having said that, now that I'm at this stage, 15 years deep, 13 years, 15 years deep, there's parts of me which thinks, I miss my family back home. I miss, you know, my regular life back home. I've spoken about that in a recent video. A lot of people nicely commented, you know, you're not missing anything back here, mate. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I'm actually getting that sort of feedback from my parents. You know, it's like, it's life's tough back there. If you can live here and live a more comfortable, peaceful, relaxing life, then you should do that. But I miss them. I miss my parents. I miss my friends. I've only known now, I feel like in my adult life abroad, I've only known that. I've never known what adult life is like back in the UK. Like, I was 24, just sort of like in and out of stuff before I left. So this will be me now forever. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully this YouTube channel blows up. I'll become a millionaire and I can do what I really want to do, which is make documentaries. But I don't want to make some half-assed documentary. I want to make documentaries about different topics. Like the salaryman culture in Japan is fascinating to me. The countryside of Korea compared to the big cities, the glamorous side of Korea that you see in the media nowadays, fascinating because it's a completely different world, night and day. Thailand, the way Thailand's developing so rapidly, it's fascinating. There's so many stories there. A couple of things I'm working on right now. And one day, maybe I'll drop something. But right now, I'm just going to keep putting out some emotional, heartfelt content on here. If you like it, you like it, and I appreciate your viewership. If you hate me, you hate me, and what can I do? I don't hate you, even if you hate me, guys. So listen, that's it for this one. It's quite a long-winded one. For those of you who are still here, thank you for watching. Have a great day and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.